So I got into real estate. Funny story. I got into real estate because my parents told me to back 10 years ago. So back there, yeah, same thing. There we go. So I served a mission in Honduras. I lived in Honduras for 2 years. And I came home and I was going to go to BYU, Idaho. So I had my dorm ready, I had everything ready. And we went to grab burgers one day with my parents, and we ran into one of their high school friends that was already a realtor, and he had a lot of business. He was doing really well, but he needed a showing agent. And so he was starting the process of trying to grow his team. So he asked my parents, hey, what's your kid doing? And my mom was like, nothing. He's not doing nothing, right? And so they called the meeting. I didn't want to go to the meeting. My mom had to go with me to the meeting. And Daniel, my former broker, just started to explain what the business was. And he's like, look, you need to go show homes. And then when he got to the part of the commission part, I had worked fast food. So I'd worked fast food full time. My check was like $300. And so when he's like, hey, it's 3%. And then I saw that the homes were like $250,000 back in the day, like $200,000 back in the day. I did the math and I was like, excuse me? Like that's really good, right? Compared to what I was doing working fast food. So I started as a showing agent. I was a showing agent for like 5 years, and then I became principal broker of that brokerage. And then now I'm off doing my own thing. But literally I got into it because my parents told me to. I'm going to scoot over this. I'm just kidding. So if we talk about the hardest thing for me, I would say two things. Number one, at first it was difficult to handle the pressure of being chosen as somebody's agent. So that to me was very hard. Because especially in the Latino community, there's so much hope behind this thing called a transaction. There's so much hope behind it. It's not just, some people see it as, wealth building, and that certainly is true. But when you're talking about the first house, it's like, where are my kids going to go to school? Where am I going to work? What is the neighborhood? There's so much hope behind this. Or even if it's like first generation home buyers, of saying, I'm the first person in my family to buy a home in the United States. Like that, to me, was extraordinary pressure. So at first, it was difficult for me to contextualize that properly because every little thing that went wrong was like devastating to me. Right? Because I so wanted them to reach their goal that if we had a bad inspection, if the appraisal was low, if something happened, it broke me. And so I felt a lot of pressure to perform on things that maybe were not in my immediate control, so to speak. And so, I would get in bad moods. I was just stressed all the time. That started pouring over to my home life. And so I had to really learn how to separate the two and just let go of the things that I can't control. Because there's so much that goes into a deal that you're not going to immediately be able to, control or even influence. If you talk about appraisals, if you talk about lending, if you talk about their credit. I mean, you can do a lot of things to try to help and educate, but it's not in your direct control. And I struggle with that a lot at first. So that was probably one of my more difficult things. If you talk about my career in general, it was leaving the team that I was with for 9 years. It was completely out of the blue. And so that's why I admire these guys, because these guys have done what I am now going to try to do, which is try to build something for myself. And so that was difficult because out of the blue, I had a meeting and they told me you're out. And you're out because your social media makes me want to puke. And so you're out because I can't tolerate you putting content on social media. So you need to leave in 2 weeks. Completely out of the blue. And so that was tough, right? And so I had to get to a place where, and here's where I would advise you guys is you got to believe that you can pull it off. Like you got to believe that you're good enough. Does that make sense? Because you're competing with all these people. And for me, it was difficult because I have a lot of friends in the industry, be it Jonah, be it Ivan, Manfred, Jimmy Rex, like Michael Perry, all these dudes are my friends. I consider you guys my friends, by the way. And I'm like, these guys have done it. Can I do it too? And it was a very personal conversation with myself of saying, do I actually think that I can pull this off? And so for all of you, I would give a similar recommendation of, do you actually think you can do this? Because that's where you got to start. Once you have that, then you can put all these tactics into play. But for me, the hardest part was after my family, my team that I was with for 9 years and sacrificed everything for, said, I have no use for you now, and now I'm on my own. Can I actually do it alone, right? And try to build something from scratch. So I would say those are my two most difficult situations.
I didn't know that. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. Wow, thank you, everybody.
So I need to invest it wisely.
Yeah. Love it.
Free.
Yeah, so if we talk about free, it's
paid.
free and paid. So free, that's the conventional answer. It's always going to be your SOI. But one of the things that I try to focus on is how can I grow that? How can I have a larger SOI? It's always the people that you know. How can I know more people? So if I were to talk about the number one free lead source for me, it's my podcast. So when I interview someone on the show, in many cases, it's their first interaction with being on a podcast. Maybe they're a business owner, maybe they're a loan officer, whatever the case may be, it's their first time. So something interesting happens when you spotlight somebody else. And what happens is they share it, and their mom shares it, and their tia shares it, and their cousins share it. Everybody shares it because everybody's excited that they get to tell their story. And so through that medium, I've been able to grow my sphere of influence to be able to reach more people by just having people on the podcast and having meaningful conversations. So that's been a tremendous lead gen for me, is just simply my podcast. That would be number one as far as free is concerned. And then paid, it has to be social media ads. So that would be number one, heavy Instagram, heavy Pinterest, heavy Facebook. If you even want to go even deeper, heavy Hulu ads locally work very well. If you want to go traditional, who here has been to the University Mall, the mall in Orem? If you go by the food court, you're going to see my face there, right? So that poster actually has worked tremendously well. So those are all paid things, right? Whether it be print, and then you have to buy ads if your content is good. So if your content works, once you get that figured out, if you can learn the ad arbitrage, again, be it Pinterest, be it Instagram or Facebook, then it can start to pick up. So free, my podcast, and paid, it would be the social media arbitrage.
Question for you. So are you doing this in both Spanish and English?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, so once you start to get a system, it allows you to post 13 to 37 pieces of content per day on different social media platforms. And so whether it's video form, whether it's written form, whether it's audio or a combination of all of it, you can easily recycle your content and your information, your valuable info, because at the end of the day, everybody that's in here has information that the public needs. Do we agree? So all of you and everybody in here is super educated. The question is, how do you stand out when there's so much noise, right? Because if there's one buyer in this room, they can only pick one of us. That's it, right? They can't work with multiple realtors, even though some people try to do that. So the question always becomes, how can you build your influence, build your impressions so that more people see you more often? So that then if you can use social media and you can get people to follow you, those 36 touches a year become 147. Does that make sense? Because it's a constant content loop and you have a better shot to be top of mind. So yeah, that answers your question. Go ahead.
So all of these touches that you're doing and with your content, where are you getting your content? So what kind of things are you posting?
Yeah, so for sure. So for example, my show, the Ask Tony Show, I sit down and I just answer 5 real estate questions, and then Ray follows me everywhere with a camera. And so what we do is I'll have 5 questions every week that I'll answer, be that real estate, be that the market, be that business, whatever the case may be. And then we chop that up into 5 individual pieces. So now from one long form YouTube show, now you have 5 individual pieces of content. You take that video, you strip the audio, now you have 5 podcasts. You have 5 different questions, now you can write 5 separate articles for LinkedIn. And it's this constant loop where from just sitting down for 20 minutes to answer 5 questions, I have 52 pieces of content that I can use, right? And so it seems like it's so heavy and it seems like it's so overwhelming, but it literally is just sit down, put a camera in your face and answer 5 questions. And then where can I post? And once you do that consistently, you just get into a groove, and now it's not that heavy. I probably spend 2 hours a week on my content, even though it seems like it would take forever, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it,
It sounds like it. Once you've got it, then it gets way easier, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Sure.
We'll go ahead. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Awesome. So my business is probably 80% Latino at this point. At my prior brokerage, it was like 99.79% Latino. And so when you talk about the niche, I guess the demographic that I'm trying to cater to is the kids of all the people that you've also homes to, like the younger generation. Kind of like what you said, like the next generation of loan officers, a similar situation of the next generation of consumers, right? And there's so many stats out there of, Latino home ownership is poised to skyrocket. And so just trying to help the newer generation to be able to understand these concepts, right? And one of the things that I learned very well early on is that when somebody comes from another country, the system is very different. So buying a home here versus buying a home in Peru or in Bolivia or in Argentina is very different. And so I really loved learning kind of the differences and helping people understand the nuances of the market here. And so the idea now is just to then translate that to their kids, to their grandkids, and things like that, so that it doesn't just stay at the top, if you will, because right now a lot of people my age feel like they're never going to be able to buy a house. Right? It's like my parents have their house, but I can't do it, be that because of low wages, or be that because of high prices, or whatever the case may be. But a lot of people my age and under, in their late 20s, feel like they're not going to be able to get it done. And the reason why they feel that way is I feel like there's just an education barrier. So when people have the proper tools to understand how this is done, I feel like the younger generation can have a better chance to actually make their way up in a way that maybe their parents or their grandparents did.
Cool. Well, my business is.
So my question is for Tony. You broke down how you do your content, correct?
Yeah.
You got that from somewhere. I want to know where you got that idea.
I got it.
Like Jonah's,
Yeah.
36 Touch, that comes from California.
Yeah.
So anybody hasn't read the MREA book,
It's a great book.
no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Where's your content?
I got it from Gary Vaynerchuk. Yeah. So he put out an 86-page deck of how he runs his content. It's the same thing. It's just contextualized to real estate. But that's where it comes from.
Okay, thank you, panelists, for that. Oh, one more question. Go ahead.
I have one question for Tony. On your social media, you're doing 13 to 37 pieces a day, is that right?
That's right.
So that takes time.
It does.
So then I'm wondering, on a 12-month period, how much money are on a percentage of either your gross revenue or your net revenue are you spending on social media marketing?
Probably 10 to 15%.
So either gross or net,
Right.
you're spending 15%, over 15%.
Yeah.
Of your gross sales or your net.
Yeah, and mainly because there's two sides to the coin. There's the cost of the post-production that I can't do, so she does it. And then there's the actual ad spend. So it's a combination of both, of a monthly recurring cost to post-produce, similar to what Ivan does with a third party that handles the social. So that can get expensive. But then at the end of the day, if you just post and you have 500 followers, the algorithm isn't going to favor you. So one of the things that a lot of people fail to realize is the algorithm works to where you post something and maybe only 2 to 4% of your base is actually going to see that post. And so if you just post and you let it go, you're never going to win. So there has to be an ad spend. But that ad spend can change depending on the results that you see. For example, Facebook is always going to be king. Instagram is very strong as well. Right now, Pinterest is extremely good because there's not a lot of people advertising on that platform. So it's just a matter of seeing where you like to play, which platform is better for you, and then test your ads. I started boosting videos on Facebook for $1 a day. And I just kind of did that, and then it worked, or some didn't work, and then I went to $2 a day. And but you do have to have some sort of budget to boost it, because very few of your organic followers are going to see what you post.
Okay, good.